Someone knew about us before the world did.
Someone has been carefully creating a false story about your wife for over a year. Find the truth.
Soon, everything will return to the way it was.
They prepared for it before anyone knew.
Ava, you need to see this. They will ask him to choose.
She didn't even look at the check. The black leather folder lay open on the polished conference table, its contents carefully arranged as though someone had rehearsed this moment for months. Divorce papers, allegations of financial fraud, confidential photographs, draft newspaper headlines ready to be published before sunset. Across from her, Victoria Kingsley folded her hands with effortless composure. "You have 1 hour," she said quietly. "Sign the papers, disappear from my son's life, and this never leaves the room." Ava Brooks lifted one photograph between her fingers. It showed her entering a charity office with a man she barely recognized. "This is fabricated," she said. Victoria didn't blink. "It won't matter once people believe it." Ava slowly closed the folder. "Does Ethan know you're threatening his wife?" For the first time, Victoria smiled. "He'll know exactly what I want him to know." The office door clicked shut behind the assistant who had escorted Ava upstairs. No witnesses. No lawyers. No security guards. Just silence heavy enough to suffocate. Then Ava reached into her handbag. Victoria leaned forward. "If you're calling Ethan," she warned, "you're making the biggest mistake of your life." Ava looked down at her phone for several long seconds before quietly placing it back inside her bag. "No," she replied. "I'm giving you one last chance to tell me why." Victoria's expression hardened. "You still don't understand what family you're married into." The words echoed through the room as the story reached back 14 months. There had been no cathedral wedding, no television cameras, no luxury resort reserved for celebrities. The richest businessman under 40 had married in the most ordinary government office in London with only 2 witnesses and a registrar who had no idea she was marrying 2 people whose combined influence stretched across continents. Ethan Kingsley had insisted on absolute secrecy. "I don't need headlines," he had told Ava after placing the ring on her finger. "I need time." She had laughed. "Time for what?" "My family." She thought he was joking. He wasn't. While financial magazines called Ethan the world's most disciplined billionaire, very few people knew the truth. Kingsley Global Holdings wasn't simply successful. It owned ports, hospitals, technology firms, renewable energy companies, media networks, luxury hotels, and investment banks across dozens of countries. Every board appointment, every partnership, and every marriage had always served one purpose: power. When Ethan introduced Ava to the family weeks later, nobody raised their voice. Nobody insulted her. Nobody argued. That had unsettled her more than open hostility. Victoria embraced her. Lucas congratulated his older brother. Eleanor complimented Ava's charity work. Everything seemed perfect. Too perfect. Driving home that evening, Ava looked across at Ethan. They were kinder than I expected. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. "That's what worries me." She frowned. "You expected something worse?" "I expected honesty." The attacks began so quietly they barely seemed connected. A children's education program Ava had spent years building suddenly lost its largest donor without explanation. An interview she was scheduled to give disappeared from the broadcaster's calendar. A newspaper published anonymous accusations claiming charity funds had been mismanaged. No evidence. No names. Just enough doubt to spread online. Her assistant called one morning, her voice trembling. "I don't understand." 3 sponsors canceled within an hour. They all said the same thing. What did they say? That they couldn't risk being associated with someone under investigation. Ava sat frozen. Investigation? "There isn't one," the assistant whispered. "At least." "I don't think there is." She immediately contacted every legal advisor connected to her foundation. Nothing. No investigations. No complaints. No government inquiries. Yet somehow rumors spread faster than facts. Every answer created 2 more questions. Meanwhile, Ethan was traveling almost constantly, negotiating one of the biggest acquisitions in Kingsley Global's history. Whenever Ava mentioned the strange events, he listened carefully. "I'll look into it," he promised. She believed him. Neither of them realized someone else was already several moves ahead. Weeks turned into months. The pressure intensified. A charity gala abruptly withdrew her invitation. A respected journalist called asking for comment on allegations that didn't exist. Bank compliance officers requested unusual documentation before approving a routine transfer to one of her humanitarian projects. Nothing catastrophic. Just enough to exhaust her. Late one evening, she arrived home to find Ethan sitting alone in his study. The lights were off. Only the city skyline illuminated his face. "You've been reading," she said softly. His desk was covered with printed emails, security reports, financial records. He slowly looked up. "When did you first notice people watching you?" Ava stopped. "What?" "You heard me." She tried to remember. "I don't know, maybe 2 months ago. You should have told me." "I thought I was imagining it." Ethan nodded once. "I don't think you were." Before she could ask another question, his phone rang. He answered immediately. No greeting, just silence as he listened. His expression changed. Not dramatically. Only enough for Ava to know something was terribly wrong. "I'll handle it," he finally said before ending the call. "What happened?" Instead of answering, he walked to the window. "Our head of cybersecurity found someone inside the company copying files from my private server." "Who?" "We don't know." "What were they looking for?" He hesitated. "You." A chill ran through the room. "My charity?" "No." "My finances?" "No." She stared at him. "Then what?" "My marriage." The next morning, Ethan ordered a confidential internal audit. Not through company executives. Not through the board. He hired an outside forensic intelligence firm that answered only to him. The instruction was simple. Don't tell anyone. Not even his family. Especially not his family. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then the lead investigator arrived carrying a single sealed envelope. "I wish I had better news," he said. Ethan opened it. Inside were screenshots showing someone had accessed restricted files using executive-level credentials. Calendar entries. Private flight manifests. Personal correspondence. Everything connected to Ava. "Can you identify who authorized this?" Ethan asked. The investigator took a slow breath. "That's the problem." "What problem?" "The authorization trail has been professionally erased." "You mean hacked?" "No." The investigator looked directly into Ethan's eyes. Someone with legitimate authority covered their tracks. Ethan's jaw tightened. "How many people have that level of access?" The answer came without hesitation. 4. Ethan, Victoria, Lucas, and Eleanor. At that exact moment, thousands of miles away, Ava's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It contained only one photograph. She opened it. Her wedding day, taken from across the street. Someone had been watching them even then. Below the photograph were 7 chilling words. "He doesn't know who he really married." If that message gave you chills, imagine how you'd react in Ava's place. Let me know in the comments whether you would tell Ethan immediately or investigate on your own. Because what Ethan discovered next would prove that this message was only the beginning. Ava read the message 3 more times, hoping the words would somehow change. They didn't. Her thumb hovered over Ethan's contact, but something stopped her. Whoever had taken that photograph wanted her to panic. They wanted her to make the first move. Instead, she deleted nothing. She forwarded the message to a secure folder and quietly drove home. Ethan was already waiting. One look at her face told him everything. "You received something." She handed him the phone without a word. He stared at the photograph for several seconds. "I never released these wedding records." "You think someone followed us that day?" "I know they did." He zoomed in on the background. Across the street, reflected in a shop window, was a black SUV. The number plate couldn't be read, but Ethan recognized the vehicle model immediately. Kingsley Global only owned 3 of them. His expression remained calm. Inside, he was furious. I need you to trust me, he said quietly. I already do. No matter what happens next. Ava nodded. I married you, Ethan. Not your name. He reached for her hand. I may have to let them think they're winning. She frowned. What does that mean? It means whoever is behind this has spent over a year preparing. If I confront them now, they'll destroy the evidence. And if you wait, they'll expose themselves. Ava searched his face. So, we're bait. He didn't answer. That silence hurt more than any lie. The following morning, Victoria Kingsley invited several board members to a private luncheon. Officially, it was about the company's expansion into Asia. Unofficially, another conversation unfolded once the staff left the room. I've become concerned about Ethan's judgment, Victoria said, placing her teacup onto its saucer. One director leaned forward. Is this about his wife? Victoria sighed. I wish it weren't. Across the table, Lucas slid a thin folder towards the directors. I didn't want to believe any of this either. Inside were copies of fabricated financial reports, edited emails, photographs taken out of context. One director whispered, "This is serious." Lucas lowered his voice. If these become public, Kingsley Global could lose billions. Nobody questioned where the documents had come from. That was exactly what Lucas had hoped. Meanwhile, Ethan's investigators were making progress. A digital forensics specialist entered the secure operations room carrying a laptop. I found something. Ethan looked up. Tell me. The deleted access logs weren't erased. They're gone. No. The specialist smiled faintly. They were hidden. He projected a timeline onto the screen. Hundreds of unauthorized logins. Most happened after midnight. Each one lasted less than 5 minutes. Every session targeted files connected to Ava. What location? Ethan asked. The specialist enlarged a map. The room fell silent. Every login originated inside Kingsley Tower. Not from outside. Not from hackers. From executive offices. The investigator spoke carefully. Someone inside this building has been conducting surveillance on your wife for 14 months. Ethan stood without saying a word. He walked to the window overlooking London skyline. So they never stopped. No. They became more confident. Yes. And they believe I haven't noticed. The specialist nodded. They're wrong. At almost the same moment, Ava received another surprise. One of her oldest friends, Sophia, appeared unannounced at her office. She looked terrified. I shouldn't even be here. What happened? Sophia locked the door. I was offered money. Ava blinked. For what? To tell reporters you diverted charity funds. Ava stared at her. How much? £500,000. Silence filled the room. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. I refused. Ava slowly reached across the desk. I know you would. Sophia shook her head. You don't understand. She slid a business card across the table. There were others waiting outside. Others. They're paying anyone who's ever worked with you. Ava looked down. The business card belonged to a private investigations firm. Except, the company had never existed. Its address was fake. Its directors were fake. Even its website had been created only weeks earlier. Whoever was behind this wasn't improvising. They were building an entire false reality. That evening, Ethan called an emergency meeting with his investigators. No assumptions, he said. Only facts. The lead investigator activated a projector. We've traced shell companies used to finance the campaign. Another analyst spoke. We've identified false media leaks. A third added quietly. And we recovered deleted voice recordings. Ethan folded his arms. Play them. Static filled the room. Then a familiar voice. Lucas. We don't need proof, he laughed. We only need enough doubt. Another voice followed. Eleanor. The board won't ask questions if they're afraid. Then, Victoria. Cold. Measured. If Ethan chooses her over this family, then he chooses to stand alone. The recording ended. Nobody spoke. Finally, the investigator broke the silence. We have enough to expose them. Ethan shook his head. Not yet. Several investigators looked confused. Sir, this is overwhelming evidence. It isn't complete. What are we missing? Ethan looked directly at the paused image of his mother's face. The person giving the orders. The room fell silent again. If Victoria isn't the mastermind, one investigator whispered, then who is? For the first time since the investigation began. Ethan didn't have an answer. Back at Kingsley Manor, Lucas poured himself a glass of whiskey. He smiled at Eleanor. She's finished. Eleanor wasn't smiling. I don't like this. You never do. Ethan's too quiet. Lucas laughed. He's grieving. No. She looked directly at him. He's hunting. Lucas dismissed her concern. Our evidence is airtight. Eleanor replied with one sentence that wiped the smile from his face. What evidence? He frowned. The evidence we created. Exactly. She leaned closer. If we could manufacture it. She paused. So can someone else. That night, Ethan made a decision that stunned everyone working for him. He canceled the investigation. Every contract. Every surveillance operation. Every forensic audit. His own security chief protested. Sir, we're days away from identifying everyone involved. Ethan calmly signed the cancellation orders. No. He slid the papers across the desk. We're exactly where I want them. News of the cancelled investigation spread through Kingsley Tower within hours. Lucas heard first. Then Victoria. Then Eleanor. For the first time in months. They relaxed. Lucas raised a glass. I told you he'd protect the company instead of her. Victoria smiled. He finally understands what's at stake. Neither of them realized one crucial detail. The investigation had never actually been cancelled. Ethan had simply moved it somewhere they could never find. If you think you would have kept fighting instead of giving up like Ethan appeared to, drop a comment below. His next move would either save everything or cost him the woman he loved forever. Late that night, just as Ava was about to fall asleep, she heard Ethan's phone vibrate. He glanced at the screen. For the first time in years, the color drained from his face. The message contained only 6 words. We know about the hidden investigation. Ethan stared at the message on his phone. For several seconds, he didn't move. Ava noticed immediately. What happened? He locked the screen. Nothing. She shook her head. No. The word was quiet, but firm. Don't do that. Ethan looked at her. Do what? Protect me by pretending everything is fine. The room became silent. For 14 months, Ethan had built his entire strategy around control. Control the information. Control the timing. Control the damage. But he had forgotten one thing. Ava wasn't someone who needed to be protected from the truth. She needed to stand beside him in it. He sat down slowly. They know. Her expression changed. Who? The family. Ava's heart sank. How? I don't know. That answer bothered Ethan more than anything else. Because Ethan Kingsley always knew. He knew market movements before they happened. He knew competitors' strategies before they announced them. He knew when a company was about to collapse before its own executives realized. But now someone had moved against him inside his own empire. And they had predicted his response. The next morning, the entire Kingsley board received an announcement. Ethan Kingsley was stepping back from executive duties temporarily. The news shocked investors. The media exploded. And within hours, the rumors returned. Sources close to Kingsley Global suggest internal family conflict. Questions raised over CEO's personal decisions. Marriage controversy threatens billionaire empire. Exactly as planned. Except nobody knew whose plan it was. At Kingsley Tower, Lucas walked into Victoria's office smiling. It's happening. Victoria looked out at the city. Don't celebrate too early. He stepped away. Temporarily. Lucas laughed. Mother, he finally understands. The company needs stability. Victoria turned around. Or he is creating space. For what? She didn't answer. Because deep down, she feared the answer. Meanwhile, Ethan wasn't hiding. He was preparing. The public believed he had withdrawn. But underneath Kingsley Tower, in a private room known only to a handful of people, Ethan sat with every piece of evidence collected over months. The fake accounts. The manipulated reports. The paid witnesses. The recordings. The surveillance files. Then something unexpected appeared. A final document. The investigator placed it on the table. We found the original authorization. Ethan looked up. Original. The first order. His eyes narrowed. Who signed it? The investigator hesitated. That hesitation told Ethan everything. Show me. The document appeared on the screen. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Because the signature wasn't Victoria's. It wasn't Lucas's. It wasn't Eleanor's. It belonged to someone Ethan had trusted more than anyone. Someone who had protected Kingsley Global for decades. Someone who had attended his wedding. Someone who had always claimed to care about his happiness. His own grandfather's former chief advisor, Martin Vale. But Martin had been dead for 3 years. Ethan stood. That's impossible. The investigator nodded. That's what we thought. Then how? The signature was copied from archived documents. Ethan stared at the screen. Someone wasn't just trying to destroy Ava. Someone had been using the history of the Kingsley family itself as a weapon. And suddenly the entire conspiracy looked different. Victoria, Lucas, and Eleanor weren't the beginning. They were only pieces. Someone had been moving them. The final board meeting arrived 7 days later. Every executive attended. Every shareholder watched. The room was prepared for one announcement. Ethan Kingsley was expected to announce his divorce. Victoria sat confidently. Lucas looked victorious. Eleanor remained silent. Then Ethan entered. No anger. No emotion. Just calm. He placed a folder on the table. I know what everyone expects me to say today. Nobody moved. They expect me to defend my marriage. He looked at Ava sitting at the far end of the room. I will. Then he turned back. But first, I want to discuss something more important. The screens behind him turned on. The first image appeared. A fake financial document. This document was presented as evidence my wife committed fraud. Another screen. Here is the original. The numbers changed. The signatures changed. The entire accusation collapsed. A murmur moved through the room. Lucas shifted in his chair. Ethan continued. This email was created to make it appear Ava contacted investors illegally. Another screen. Here is the server record proving it was created inside Kingsley Tower. Nobody looked comfortable anymore. One by one, Ethan dismantled every accusation. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every carefully designed trap. Then he showed the recordings. Lucas's voice filled the room. We only need enough doubt. Eleanor's voice followed. The board will follow fear. Then Victoria. If Ethan chooses her over this family, he chooses to stand alone. The room went completely silent. Victoria looked at her son. You recorded your own family? Ethan's expression didn't change. No. He paused. I recorded people who betrayed mine. Lucas stood. You think she is worth destroying everything for? Ethan looked at his brother. No. Everyone waited. She is the reason I finally realized what this empire had turned me into. The words hit harder than any accusation. Lucas had expected anger, not disappointment. Victoria looked away. For the first time, she looked old. Not powerful. Not untouchable. Just a mother who realized she had pushed her son too far. But Ethan wasn't finished. There will be consequences. Lucas's face changed. Eleanor lowered her eyes. Victoria remained still. Lucas Kingsley is removed from all executive positions effective immediately. Lucas opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Eleanor Shaw will surrender control of all financial operations pending a complete review. Then Ethan looked at his mother. Victoria Kingsley will no longer have authority over company decisions. The room froze. Nobody had ever removed Victoria Kingsley from anything. She had built the family structure. She had controlled the empire. But Ethan had done something she never expected. He chose accountability over tradition. Months later, the world saw a different side of Ethan Kingsley. Not the billionaire on magazine covers. Not the CEO surrounded by security. Just a man walking beside his wife through a children's hospital funded by the Kingsley Foundation. Ava watched children laughing in the hallway. This is what all of it should have been about. Ethan nodded. I spent years protecting an empire. She looked at him. And now? He smiled slightly. Now I'm protecting something that matters. For the first time, there were no cameras, no investors, no family politics, no one trying to control their future. Only two people who had survived a war they never wanted, and an empire that finally belonged to the people it was meant to serve. Because the greatest threat to a billionaire isn't always losing money. Sometimes it's discovering that the people closest to you were only loyal to your power. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemies. It's refusing to become like them. If Ethan and Ava's story showed anything, it's that trust is worth more than any fortune. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more powerful billionaire dramas, and comment below. Would you have forgiven your own family after a betrayal like this, or would you have walked away forever?